As I sat in the diner that fateful morning, little did I know that I was about to witness a chilling encounter that would leave a lasting impact on our small town. It all started when Karen humiliates a veteran for his prosthetic eye and ends up in jail. Here's how it all went down. One morning as usual, I went into a diner for my morning coffee. Little did I know that this ordinary day would spiral into a bizarre encounter, courtesy of none other than Karen, the town's infamous source of annoyance and stubbornness. As I sipped my coffee and scanned the local newspaper, the diner's door swung open, and in walked Karen, a woman whose reputation preceded her. She strutted over to the counter, where a few regulars were seated, including a weathered-faced man who exuded a quiet strength, a veteran, as I later learned. Karen's eyes zeroed in on the veteran's prosthetic eye, and with a dramatic point, she declared, "Oh my God, are you serious? Is that some kind of weird fashion statement? You people these days will do anything for attention." The diner fell silent as the veteran calmly explained, "Ma'am, I lost my eye during my time in the service. It's a prosthetic." Karen scoffed, dismissing his explanation. "Yeah, right. More like you lost it because of some drug addiction. I've seen it all, honey." The tension escalated, and the veteran, with remarkable composure, said, "Ma'am, I'm a veteran. I lost my eye in combat. It's not something I'm proud of, but it's a part of my story." Karen, undeterred, leaned in closer and snarled, "Combat my foot. I bet you were just high on drugs, stumbling around like an idiot, and bam, there goes your eye. Probably deserved it." The diner's atmosphere shifted from casual to uncomfortable, with patrons exchanging bewildered glances. The veteran took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I served my country with honor. I don't appreciate your accusations." But Karen, relentless, retorted, "Honor? Please. I've seen your type before. Always playing the victim card, probably begging for sympathy and discounts everywhere you go." The veteran, with a quiet but firm tone, said, "Ma'am, I don't need sympathy or discounts. I need people like you to understand the sacrifices veterans make. Your ignorance is truly repulsive." The diner fell silent again, the weight of the veteran's words hanging in the air. Karen, unfazed, countered, "Repulsive? Ha! You're just trying to guilt-trip everyone. I won't fall for it." The diner owner intervened, banning Karen from the establishment. She huffed and stormed out, leaving the veteran, the owner, and the patrons in a bewildered silence. The aftermath was swift news coverage, social media outrage, and even legal action. As the story gained traction, the town rallied behind the veteran. The diner owner organized a community event to honor veterans, and local businesses supported the cause. Karen, oblivious to the growing storm, faced charges of harassment and public disturbance. In the courtroom showdown, the judge handed down a sentence that included community service and mandatory education on veterans' issues. Karen, defiant to the end, dismissed the verdict as biased. The veteran, having weathered the storm, became a symbol of resilience. The town transformed, engaging in conversations about empathy and understanding. Karen, isolated and facing the consequences of her actions, became a cautionary tale. The clash between Karen and the veteran left a lasting impact on us. It sparked vital conversations, prompted reflection on societal values, and served as a reminder that empathy should prevail. The incident became a turning point for the town, a small community that learned the power of unity and the consequences of willful ignorance. Wow, what a powerful story. It's a shame that some people can be so ignorant and judgmental. Kudos to the veteran for handling the situation with such grace and dignity. This incident really highlights the importance of empathy and understanding in our society. Let's all strive to be more compassionate towards one another. Amidst the tangled web of family dynamics and years of resentment, I found myself caught in a bitter struggle between my niece and my own son, each vying for a place in my heart. Little did I know that this power struggle would escalate into a shocking act of revenge that would leave my family shattered. Here's how it all went down. When I was 18 and my sister was 22, she had my nephew, let's call him Luke, with her then boyfriend, now husband. My sister and her husband didn't show any interest in Luke when he was born, so I took on the role of taking care of him. I asked my grandmother to watch him while I was in my last year of high school, in exchange for me cleaning and cooking for her on the weekends. My parents weren't much help either. They would give me about $100 a month for Luke, which, as you know, isn't much when you have a kid. My grandmother and I were the only ones taking care of him. A year after I graduated from high school, my parents, sister, and her husband kicked me out because they didn't want to deal with us anymore. My sister even said she wished she had never given birth to Luke. I immediately went to my grandmother, and together we went to a family law attorney. I was able to gain custody of Luke, and my sister and her husband signed over their rights to me. I lived with my grandmother, and when I went to community college and worked part-time, she watched my son Luke. It was a lot of work, especially when my grandmother passed away when Luke was 6. In her will, my grandmother left 90% of her things to me, which caused my parents and sister to reach out to me under false intentions to reconnect with me and meet my son. However, that didn't last long, and I made it clear to them that they could either treat us with respect or never see us again. My dad chose to reconnect with my son and me, and now we have a close relationship. On the other hand, my mom and I don't talk much, but she treats Luke nicely. When Luke was 8, both my sister and I became pregnant, and that's when my sister started telling him that my husband and I wouldn't love him anymore once my actual son came along. My husband met my son when he was 5, and we had already been together for a year at that point. My husband treats Luke as his own, and we got married when my son was 7. We officially adopted him when he was 9, with his permission. We found out about my sister's hurtful words when Luke broke down crying one day, asking us not to leave him after we assured him that it would never happen. He explained what my sister and her husband had been saying. Luke knows that he's not my biological son, but he is my son. After that, I cut contact with my sister and her husband again and did family therapy and individual therapy for my son. When I had my son, 1 pregnancy, 2 children, I made it clear that our love for him, Luke, didn't change. When my sister reached out about 2 years later, I decided to go low contact with her with the okay from my son and husband. My husband and I live comfortably, while my sister and her husband struggle sometimes financially. My kids did extracurricular activities, got the presents they wanted, and went on one big family trip in the summer. While my sister and her husband couldn't afford much, so when my niece was around 9, my sister started making comments about how I needed to pay for this or that for my niece. But I told her it wasn't my job. I gave my niece the gifts she wanted, took her out from time to time, but nowhere near how I would treat my own kids. Now my second son is turning 17, and my husband and I were talking about getting him a cheap starter car. We did the same for Luke when he was 17. My niece is also turning 17, and apparently my sister told her she was going to get a car too. The thing is, my sister can't afford to buy her a car, so she asked me to, but I told her I wasn't going to buy her a car, that I didn't promise her one, and that it's not my job to get her one. My sister then got mad and didn't talk to me for a while. When my son's 17th birthday came around, we surprised him with a car. My niece then called me a couple of days later, screaming and crying, asking me why I hate her and why I can't treat her the same as her brother. I calmly told her things were different. Her brother is my son while she is my niece. I'm her aunt and nothing more. That as an aunt, my job was birthday presents, Christmas presents, and showing up when it mattered. That was it. That her brother will always mean more to me than she'll ever be. Then my niece started yelling at me again, telling me that I'm being unfair, and hung up. My sister then called me to berate me about how I need to do more. I told her if she wouldn't have promised a car to her or my money to my niece, none of this wouldn't have happened. It's been a couple of days and I'm getting calls from some family and some of my sister's friends, calling me a jerk and some other things. I do feel bad because my kids did grow up with more, and I guess I could have helped more. So am I the jerk for what I said to my niece? First, I want to set something straight. I never let my sister hurt my kids like some of y'all think. The low contact was for my niece, and that's all it was. When birthdays were coming up, we would talk about birthdays or holidays. The conversation would consist of when I would pick up my niece, let's call her Emily, how long I would keep her, and when I would drop her off back home. My sister never kept my kids, never been to my house, and never talked to them without me or my husband present. Now another reason for the civil relationship with my sister is because Emily and my second son, let's call him Justin, went to the same school. So any type of school event that was going on, my sister was there. My kids and niece had a good relationship before the car situation. Justin and Emily had a close relationship, and Emily and Luke had a friendly relationship. I always made sure my kids were happy where my sister was in their life, which is basically non-existent except for some school events and some big family get-together. Update. 2 days after Emily's call, I decided to call her to meet up with her. We decided to meet at a park that's a few minutes away from my home. When we met, Emily seemed normal but a little bit tired. I told her I didn't mean to hurt her in any way, but she needs to understand it's not my job because I'm not her parent. She said she understood that, but she was jealous that her brother, Luke, and Justin got everything that they wanted. I told her that first, Luke isn't her brother, but a cousin. Second of all, they don't get everything they want. They work for it. They get good grades, do chores, stay out of trouble for the most part. I then asked her the real reason for why she was acting this way, that she never had a problem before this. She then started crying, saying it wasn't fair that Luke and Justin get everything they want, while she gets barely anything. That Luke lucked out in life by being adopted by my husband and I. That she deserves to have what my sons have. That she is my family, so I have to take care of her too. I told that she is part of my family but not my child. That I do love her, but she's not my responsibility. I then asked her why she feels so strongly about it. She said that even though her parents do take good care of her, she feels like she's just an obligation to them. When she sees how Luke and Justin were raised, she gets jealous because in her eyes we don't look at the boys as an obligation, that we are a family that's always together and always works through problems and helps each other. That even though I stayed in her life and took her out with my family, she always felt jealous that she had to be that one to leave, that she felt second place, and since I took in Luke, I should take her in with no problem. I told her that while I understand her feelings, I'm not gonna treat her as my kid. I didn't raise her, but I do love her, that it's her parents' job to get her a car or to help her get one. Then she got more upset saying that I clearly don't care about her, and she left. I texted her saying that I do care for her, but I'm not her mom and it's not my job. After I got home, my husband and I talked and we decided to call my sister. I told her that my family and I are going full no contact. My sister then asked about how I'm going to get in contact with Emily. I told her Emily is almost an adult, she can contact me if she wants. She then asked me if I was going to get Emily a car. I said no. I told her that it's her job, that she's her mother and needs to act like it. Emily needs her to be a mom, and hung up the phone, blocked and deleted her number. The next day, I got a call from my mom. She believes that I should give Emily some money for a car if I won't give her one. I told I wasn't going to do that and hung up because all it's going to do is cause a fight. I then called Dad and explained everything and he thinks I'm right. Then my dad called asking if he could come over on Wednesday. When he showed up, he was visibly upset. Mom gave a big chunk of money out of my parents' retirement fund to my sister. This has caused my parents to have a huge fight, which led my dad to packing a suitcase and staying in a motel for a bit. Now I'm no contact with my sister and mom. I'll be going low contact with my niece for now. About a week after the post, I decided to talk to Emily. We decided to meet at my home. I asked everyone not to be home because I wanted her and I to talk privately. When she showed up, she didn't really want to look at me and I asked her if I could give her a hug. She nodded her head and the minute I hugged her, she cried. She said she was sorry for how she acted, and I told her she didn't need to apologize. I asked her about how her parents treat her again to understand more about what's going on. She told me that her dad treats her well and he tries to spend time with her, but he's busy because he works 2 jobs. While my sister is home more, she usually just keeps to herself and doesn't really like to be bugged. I then asked her if she feels like she's been neglected. She said no, just sometimes they don't have family time that much because her parents argue a lot, especially about money. That sometimes her mom does make her feel like an obligation, but she knows that they do love her. I then asked her about the money my mom took from the retirement fund. She said that she and my sister were going car shopping soon. I then brought up her calling Luke her brother and if she feels that way about him. She said she sees him like a cousin and she thought if she played the brother card, I would feel inclined to help her. She then explained that even though they are biologically siblings, they are cousins and will always be cousins. I then asked her if she knew how I ended up adopting Luke. She said that she knew, and her dad had explained what they did. Apparently my sister sugar-coated it while her dad told her the blunt truth, and it was the complete truth that he told her. Luke only sees her as a cousin also. Luke only has one sibling, and that's Justin. I then spoke to her about seeing a therapist that we would pay for. My husband agreed. She said she would think about it. I then asked her if she would like to do a fun day out with me on Saturdays. She got excited and said she would really like that. So that weekend we went on our first day out. We went to this restaurant that she's been wanting to try. We had a good time. I then took her to a bookstore because she loves to read, and I bought her a couple of books that she's been wanting. When Emily and I were supposed to have our second weekend out, I had to cancel because Justin ended up in the hospital. While at football practice, he started wheezing a little bit, and he took his inhaler, but didn't wait the appropriate time. He then got tackled, which knocked the wind out of him and caused him to have a bad asthma attack. This happened on a Friday, and Justin stayed at the hospital till Sunday. Emily and I were supposed to go out Saturday, and that morning I called her and told I had to cancel before I could tell her why she started yelling at me saying I never cared about her, and hung up the phone. I tried calling her back, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I sent her a text saying that I didn't mean to hurt her, but Justin was in the hospital and that we can have our day next weekend. I never heard back from her. I gave up on reaching out to her after a couple of days. 2 days ago, my family and I were out for a family night when my neighbors called saying that they called the cops because someone was vandalizing one of our cars. When we got home, the cops were there and it was Justin's car. The car had scratches, little dents, and paint. There are 2 broken windows. My husband and I checked our security footage. You could clearly see Emily and someone else vandalizing the car. My husband gave the video copy to the police and Emily and her friend got arrested next morning. My sister and mom came to my house screaming that I was ruining my niece's life, and if I loved her, I would drop the charges. My husband has admitted that we don't drop the charges, and Justin and Luke agree with my husband. A lot of people have asked Luke's view on everything, so I decided to talk to him. He said he's over everything, and it's best to cut contact with everyone, even Emily, because she's just like her mom. So we are cutting contact with everyone except for my dad. Family dynamics can be incredibly complex and challenging, and it's not always easy to navigate the complexities of relationships. It's important to remember that every family is unique, and sometimes, difficult decisions have to be made for the well-being of everyone involved. It all started innocently enough, with insecurities and comparisons between my wife and her conventionally attractive sister. But when Mary's advances turned into something more, it set off a chain of events that threatened to tear our lives apart. Here's how it all went down. As the title suggests, I found myself in a difficult situation when my wife's sister made advances towards me at a recent family gathering, and I'm unsure of how to handle it. To provide some context, I find my wife, Jenna, absolutely stunning, but she struggles with negative body image due to her sister Mary, who is conventionally attractive compared to Jenna's more unique and striking beauty, in my opinion. Mary used to be a successful model, and now works in the fashion industry. During the early days of our relationship, whenever I complimented Jenna on her beauty, she would always bring up her sister, and ask if I thought Mary was more attractive. I consistently reassured Jenna that I find Mary attractive in a conventional way, but I find Jenna to be more beautiful and captivating. However, Jenna would persistently ask about her sister until I expressed my discomfort and asked her to stop. During this conversation, Jenna revealed that she has always felt insecure about her looks due to being compared to her sister while growing up. They have always fallen into the stereotypical smart one, pretty one dynamic. Jenna also warned me that Mary has a tendency to flirt with her exes and pleaded with me not to cheat on her with her sister. I vehemently assured Jenna that I would never cheat on her with anyone, especially her sister, as I have been deeply in love with her from the beginning, and there is no other woman who could compare to her. Initially, I didn't believe Jenna's claims about Mary's flirting. I assumed it was a result of her insecurity, but I was mistaken. Every time we gather with Jenna's family, Mary finds ways to touch me and make suggestive comments or innuendos about me or my body. This situation is uncomfortable for everyone involved, particularly my wife, and I have confronted Mary about it in the past. While she temporarily stops, she eventually resumes this behavior. This pattern has continued for 6 years, and each time it happens, my wife is upset for days, and I have to provide a great deal of reassurance. Onto the current problem. A few days ago, we were at my mother-in-law's birthday party, and Mary asked me to help her get some things from the garage. As soon as we entered the garage, she abruptly pressed me against the door with her entire body and attempted to kiss me. I immediately pushed her away and asked her what she thought she was doing. She started giggling and claimed that she was simply acting on what we both had in mind and persistently insisted, "You know you want to." I told her she was out of her mind and quickly left. I went directly to my wife and informed her that we needed to leave. Throughout the entire ride home, she kept asking me what was wrong. I wasn't sure if I should tell her because I knew how much it would hurt her, but I also anticipated that Mary might try to twist the situation and accuse me of making advances towards her, so I knew I had to be honest. I recounted everything to my wife, and she cried the entire way home. Over the past few days, Mary has been calling and texting my wife, doing exactly what I had anticipated. She even went as far as telling my wife that I said she, Mary, was the most attractive girl I've ever seen, which I had to assure my wife countless times that I did not and would never say, even though she believes my side of the story. My wife has been a complete wreck these past few days. She's hardly eating, and she pulls away when I try to hug her or hold her hand. She says she feels hideous and disgusting, and I don't know how to help her. Seeing her in this state is the most painful thing I've ever witnessed. I have no idea how to assist her in healing from this. I realized that I have never taken the time to check in with myself after these incidents, and I have been holding a lot of frustration and resentment about it all. I have been harassed for years, and it has either been dismissed or overshadowed by the impact it has on my wife. I don't blame her, but this has taught me the importance of not burying my feelings for the sake of others, even for her. I also want to clarify a couple of things that came up. Several people asked about how my wife's family feels about all this, and I explained in a comment that her parents are toxic and treat Mary as the golden child. Even though my wife is a neuroscientist, talented musician, and fluent in 3 languages, with conversational skills in 2 more, it's frustrating that my wife and her family are the only ones who don't seem to recognize how exceptional she is. I remember meeting one of my wife's family friends and discussing her research, and they said, "Oh wow, her parents just told us she works at a university." Meanwhile, my parents introduce her as the family genius to everyone. It angers me to think about how her family has consistently overshadowed her accomplishments. They only seem to care about looks and money. Some people asked why I would ever put myself in a situation alone with Mary, given everything she's done. I don't have a good answer for that, other than I never thought she would actually try to do anything. That possibility didn't exist in my mind. Now I realize that I should have seen this coming and been less concerned with keeping the peace, and more focused on shutting down Mary's behavior before it escalated to this point. Hindsight is 20/20. Moving on to the update, the night I posted, I told my wife that if she wanted to repair her relationship with her sister, I would respect that, but I don't feel comfortable being around Mary for the foreseeable future. I explained that Mary has always been deeply jealous of my wife because she is a hollow, ugly person whose value is temporary while my wife has substance. I expressed that I believe her whole family is toxic and has consistently belittled her, but ultimately, she is the one who can decide whether she wants them in her life. I also told my wife that while I don't blame her for her emotional reaction, her insecurity is something she needs to work on for the sake of our relationship. What Mary did was sexual assault, and she has been sexually harassing me for years. However, I have consistently put aside my own feelings about this issue because of how it affects my wife, and that has prevented me from receiving the support I need as well. I explained to her that her reaction only serves to punish herself and me for her sister's behavior, and there's no reason to give her that kind of power. I also shared with her something that resonated with me from a commenter. The only people who have ever considered her second best are her and her family. Everyone else sees her for who she truly is. She cried throughout our conversation and agreed that she needs to seek therapy to work on her insecurity. We were able to find a therapist who specializes in body image and self-esteem issues to work with her individually, and we're also looking for a couples therapist. My wife sent a message to her parents and sister explaining exactly what happened and stating that she will reach out to them if she ever feels ready to repair their relationship. We have blocked all of them everywhere, but Mary has been spamming my family and our friends with nonsense, claiming that I attacked her, I'm a drug addict, and that I abuse my wife. Fortunately, nobody believes her. My wife is still feeling down, but I can see that things are slowly improving. She is eating and sleeping more, and we are cuddling in the mornings again, which is nice. Now I am planning a surprise getaway for us this weekend. We will be going to one of our favorite places, and I will make an effort to treat her like the amazing queen she is. Once again, I want to thank all of you for your help. You really helped me understand the seriousness of the problem, and thank you for helping me connect with my own feelings about all this. You are all the best. Firstly, I want to address the numerous questions about Mary's identity. I have decided not to disclose this information. All I can say is that while she may not be a household name, she worked as a model for about a decade and had enough popularity within the fashion industry. I am not familiar with how that world operates, but I believe that having a Wikipedia page is a significant indicator of fame. On another note, I received comments referring to me as a simp, mostly in a joking manner. I cannot deny that I am a simp for my wife. She is amazing, and I hope that everyone finds a love that makes them feel the same way. Now let's get to the actual update. My wife thoroughly enjoyed our weekend getaway, and we had an incredible time. She expressed feeling like herself again by the end of it. However, when we returned, things became eerily quiet for a few days. We hoped that Mary had finally given up, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Many of you warned me that Mary might try to interfere with my work. Although I initially dismissed these concerns, I decided to reach out to my boss just in case. Since I have been working at the same company for nearly a decade, my boss is familiar with my previous discussions about Mary. Therefore, I didn't need to provide much explanation. My boss reassured me, stating that she knows my true character and will inform me if Mary attempts anything. As predicted, a couple of days later, Mary did in fact contact my boss. Here is a summary of what my boss shared with me. Mary claimed that I should be fired because I am a predator, and she had proof of an assault. My boss responded seriously, asking Mary to explain what evidence she had. Mary mentioned the existence of a video from a camera that captured the entire incident. In response, my boss requested Mary to send the video. However, Mary became flustered and stated that the police possessed the video. My boss then asked Mary to send a copy of the police report instead. Mary argued that the report contained private information, making her uncomfortable with sharing it. In turn, my boss informed her that she could not take action against an employee based solely on the word of a stranger. Mary proceeded to shout at my boss, accusing her of victim blaming, before hanging up. Unfortunately, the ordeal did not end there. Last Wednesday, Mary somehow managed to send an email from my personal account to the entire office, containing an explicit image. Not mine, of course. My best guess is that I must have left my email logged in on one of my in-laws' devices. Mary lacks the technical skills to hack into my account. Now, I know this is completely unrelated, but it is worth mentioning that she chose the most peculiar-looking image I've ever seen. Having played team sports all my life, I have seen my fair share of anatomy, and this was truly something else. It is actually quite amusing to picture Mary searching for images of gross penises, or something similar, scrolling through hundreds of options to find the perfect one. I had to apologize to my colleagues, but fortunately, they were surprisingly understanding. In fact, it has unexpectedly brought us closer together. I never considered myself to be particularly well-liked in the office, but it seems like everyone has been making an effort to show kindness towards me. and it means a lot. At this point, it became evident that we needed to take legal action. I had hoped to avoid this, but Mary left me with no choice. Fortunately, my wife and I have a lawyer friend who helped us draft a cease and desist letter. The letter outlines Mary's continued harassment and the emotional and material damage it has caused us. My wife then sent a message to Mary and my in-laws, attaching a copy of the letter and making it explicitly clear that we would pursue criminal and/or civil proceedings if the harassment persisted. In response, my wife's mother called her in tears, pleading for her to let it go and leave Mary alone. Calmly, my wife explained that Mary bears sole responsibility for this entire situation, and their parents have always enabled her terrible behavior. My wife also said something she later regretted but found empowering. Mary will eventually place both of you in a nursing home and steal your money the moment she has the chance, and you deserve it. After witnessing her mother's reaction, my wife has firmly decided to cut off all contact with her family. This occurred on Friday, and on Sunday, Mary's best frenemy, Anne, messaged my brother on Facebook to inform him that Mary will leave us alone and to please refrain from pursuing legal action. I advised my brother not to respond and savored the thought of Mary somewhere, panicking about the potential consequences she may face. It must be an incredibly strange feeling for her. Since then, we haven't heard anything through the grapevine. It finally feels like things are returning to normal. My wife will begin therapy next week, and we plan to start couples therapy in a month or two. She wants to focus on personal improvement first. Additionally, she will be taking a short leave from work to rest and recharge. I am immensely proud of her for standing up for herself against her family and prioritizing her mental health and well-being. Once again, thank you to everyone who offered their advice. This situation has been messy, but it would have been even messier without your help. Mary and my in-laws have mostly left us alone. My mother-in-law still tries to contact my wife every now and then, but she's made it clear to her family that if the first words out of their mouths aren't "I'm sorry," she isn't interested in a conversation. As you can see, the past 6 months have made my wife a strong person. She has done some amazing work in therapy and her confidence is growing all the time. It's not just with her family. She's more comfortable asserting herself at work, with strangers, with friends, and so on. She's even stopped putting up with some of my bad habits. To be fair, those habits include leaving my socks everywhere around the house, but I'm seriously proud of her for telling me to cut it out. I'm becoming a more responsible and supportive partner because she's able to communicate her needs and expectations without feeling guilty about it. And I'm able to communicate things to her without intense emotions completely taking over the conversation. I didn't mention this in my earlier posts, but my wife does struggle with rejection sensitivity even outside of her family. Often, if I brought up something that I felt needed to change, her emotional reaction to feeling like she did something wrong would be really intense, and instead of dealing with the problem, it would become about regulating her emotions. Now, my wife has really good coping tools that allow her to talk about the problem without thinking she is the problem. And the biggest update, she's pregnant. We have a baby girl due in February. I'm incredibly excited. We are going to love her so much and teach her that she is more than her appearance. She's going to have happy parents who love each other and work through issues as a team. The toxic cycle will be broken. Jenna's family doesn't know, and she's not sure if or when she'll tell them. But if she does, there will be strong boundaries in place for how they can be a part of our daughter's life. And it will start with family therapy. For now, she has one set of grandparents that will go to great lengths for her, and that's more than enough. My family has been incredibly supportive and excited for us. Things are looking better than ever. That's all, folks. Thank you again for your support on this wild journey. Well, one thing I've learned from this story is that life can throw some crazy curveballs at you. It's a reminder to always expect the unexpected and be prepared to navigate through the unexpected twists and turns. Lesson learned, for sure. Amidst the excitement of planning my wedding, I was faced with a dilemma that would forever alter the course of my special day. Torn between the expectations of tradition and the toxic presence of my father, I grappled with the decision that would determine my happiness. Little did I know, this choice would unleash a series of events that would leave me questioning my sanity and fighting for the peaceful future I longed for. Here's how it all went down. I am getting married to my fiancée this October. At the time of our engagement, I was living with my dad to save money on rent. However, after I told my dad of our engagement, he promptly got jealous and tried to lock me in my room so we could talk. I managed to get out of the house after threatening to call the cops and quickly moved in with my fiancée. Since then, my dad has come around to support us, and I don't buy it. For context, growing up, my dad has only cared about himself and his image, which caused him and my mom to divorce when I was 5. Since then, all my dad has done is try to keep me under his control and in his house. For example, he tells me that the rest of my family doesn't want me. No one else would like me. I was too fat to have friends, but he'd still be my friend, and he's the only one I should care about, etc. Now, after my dad has come around for the wedding, he has paid for half of the dress, roughly $800, and for postage for the save the dates and invites. Here's how I may be the jerk. After thinking about this 50 ways to hell and back, I can't see myself as happy with my dad walking me down the aisle, having a father-daughter dance, etc. My mom and future mother-in-law have both agreed that if I don't feel comfortable with my dad in the wedding party, then I can ask him to not be in the party. He can still attend the wedding, but just as a guest. However, my fiancé says that since he has paid for part of the dress, he should be in the wedding party. Knowing my dad, if I tell him he's not a part of the party, he'll throw a fit, and I don't know if I can handle that right now on top of the wedding planning. Would I be the jerk if I tell my dad he won't be part of the wedding party? So I forgot about this whole post and page for a bit. And holy crap did things go down at the wedding. Also adding more details as the previous update was in the comments and therefore limited characters. I did end up telling my dad he was no longer part of the wedding party after we caught him trying to change wedding plans, his reasoning for trying to change stuff. I helped pay for the wedding so I can make decisions too. He could still attend as a guest, but he would not be walking me down the aisle or anything like that. One of my dear friends, who is very much more of a father figure to me, did end up walking me down the aisle with my mom. I did pay him back for everything that he paid money towards. Not quite $1,000. He did, as predicted, throw a woe is me tantrum on social media saying I was rude and not his daughter for not letting him walk me down the aisle and, quote, taking away his dream. What the heck? Important side note, we had a movie reference on the tables involving peanuts. And another note, my dad has had many medical emergencies in his life. That is, he's had stage 4 lymphoma cancer that he was cured of, swine flu, pneumonia, Ebola, COVID. But somehow, before it was even a big deal in China, and he's severely allergic to many foods, yet doesn't own an epinephrine pen for any allergies, despite having insurance that would cover most if not all of the expense. Anyways, he did attend as a guest, which I now regret letting him, as he did try to crash our first look and tried to get into the bridal suite to talk to me about walking down the aisle. When asked what about, he wanted to try to talk me out of marrying my now wife because she wasn't a good person. Again, what the heck? And that he had evidence that she had been cheating on me. But when asked to see said evidence, he said he didn't have it on him, obviously, as my wife hadn't been cheating on me. My dad proceeded to storm away after my maid of honor didn't let him inside, and he took a seat at one of the tables with the aforementioned peanuts. He lost his cool. There weren't even many on the tables, maybe a small handful at most, 5, 7. He screamed and swore at the sight of the peanuts on the table and went off on how he didn't feel good, couldn't breathe, etc. I had a view through a window from the suite of what went down, and it looked like a scene straight out of a cheap soap opera. He knocked over the chairs, crashed back into another table, and when offered medical attention, one of my uncles runs a small family practice. He declined and said he would drive himself to the emergency room and promptly left. I did receive a text later saying how could I have peanuts on the table when I knew he had a peanut allergy, etc. But I left him on read and continued enjoying the party. We haven't talked since, and my wife and I are now expecting our first kid in the next few weeks. My dad has not reached out since the wedding, and it's been the most stress-free time in my life. So yesterday, my wife and I had to go to the hospital to check on the baby. It wasn't a scheduled appointment. I was experiencing really bad Braxton Hicks contractions, so the doctor wanted to examine us. Thankfully, everything looked fine. However, my dad somehow found out about our pregnancy, and suddenly, I started receiving a barrage of texts and calls. The notifications on my phone became overwhelming, to the point where I had to turn it off to regain some peace. The rest of our visit at the hospital went well, lasting about 3.5 hours. When I turned my phone back on, I was curious to see what had happened. To my surprise, my dad was angry that I hadn't informed him about the pregnancy. Frankly, I don't care about his opinion. I don't trust him around children, especially my own, since I discovered his troubling history. He used to be a bishop in the religion I was raised in, and there was evidence suggesting inappropriate behavior behind closed doors in his office. That's all I'm willing to disclose online. If you know, you know. He asked about the due date and other typical parental questions. Here's where things got weird. He then proceeded to ask who else would be in the delivery room besides himself, when he and I would attend the 4D ultrasound, and when the next doctor's appointment would be so he could join me instead of my wife. Yes, you read that correctly. He invited himself to be in the delivery room and attend every appointment leading up to the delivery, without even asking. I firmly said no, explaining that it would only be my wife and me present during doctor's appointments, the ultrasound, and especially in the delivery room. He tried to turn it around, claiming he was being considerate, and even suggested that my very religious grandmother could be in the delivery room instead. Once again, I declined. She has also caused significant religious trauma in the past, and I am not comfortable with her being in the same building as my unborn child, let alone the delivery room. I have reached a point where I want to go no contact with most of my extended family. To ensure my father cannot interfere, I have set up passwords and anonymous patient security measures with the hospital and my doctor. Currently, we are maintaining very limited contact with my dad and grandma. I just needed to vent about this, as it sadly represents the norm in my family. However, my wife struggles to understand why my family behaves this way, and it sometimes makes me question my sanity. Thank you for listening. My baby girl is here. She arrived almost 3 months ago. She is very healthy and was born 3 weeks early. I have now almost completely cut off contact with my dad and grandma, his mother. During the delivery, my father did try to show up at the hospital but was promptly escorted off the property by security. My doctor and the medical team were absolutely amazing in handling the situation and dealing with my grandma, who also tried to cause problems, according to my wife, who handled them while I was in labor. There was even an instance when my wife and I were at a doctor's appointment, and my dad showed up, trying to gain access and claiming to be the actual father. I wish I were joking, but he actually said that. He makes me feel disgusted every time he opens his vile mouth. Oh, how I wish I could silence him. To make a long story short, another reason why I have limited contact with my father is because he texts me, asking about his baby, referring to my daughter, and when she can come stay with him, among other things. We plan to move to the East Coast sometime next year, and we will not be sharing our address or even the city with that side of the family. Additionally, we will be changing our phone numbers as well. The story above emphasizes the significance of setting boundaries and prioritizing one's own well-being when faced with toxic family dynamics. The key lessons learned include recognizing toxic relationships, even within the family, and prioritizing personal happiness by surrounding oneself with supportive individuals. It is crucial to establish and effectively communicate clear boundaries, seeking support from trusted individuals who respect and understand one's decisions. Finally, practicing self-care and taking steps to protect oneself are essential in maintaining overall well-being. Always remember, prioritizing your own well-being should be paramount. As I navigate the treacherous waters of being treated like an extra pair of hands, constantly sacrificing my own needs for the whims of my mother, the weight of responsibilities grows heavier. With each demand and disregard, my mental health deteriorates further. Little did I know, these seemingly innocent tasks would plunge me into a never-ending cycle of neglect. Here's how it all went down. Before anyone accuses me of being a whiny kid, let me clarify something. Washing dishes, cleaning up after oneself, taking care of a pet, or other menial chores are not considered labor in this context. These are simply tasks that everyone should know how to do in order to improve their quality of life. Furthermore, it's perfectly acceptable to ask a child to flip a light switch if your hands are full, or to have them help clean the home that you share. It's fine to ask a kid for help, or to have them clean up after themselves if they're old enough. However, what is not acceptable is making them do everything all the time. Unfortunately, this is the situation I find myself in. As an adult, I pay to stay here just like anyone else. I keep the place clean, cook for the family whenever I can afford ingredients, and take care of the children when necessary. But I'm constantly interrupted from whatever I'm doing to perform these little side tasks for my mom, or to prepare and serve food to her when she's too tired, lazy to do it herself. She's extremely picky, so getting food often requires multiple trips to and from the kitchen, which she occasionally finds amusing. I am often called well after breakfast hours, sometimes close to noon, because the kids need breakfast, and since I happen to not be working that morning, it's expected that I take care of it. When I ask why they weren't fed earlier, my mother comes up with some excuse about not having enough time, all while still lying in bed in her pajamas. She couldn't find the time to pour a few bowls of cereal, and now it has become my problem. The same thing happens with lunch on the days when I finish work early. I come home, and before I can even get through the doorway, they're asking for McDonald's, tacos, or my fancy little grilled cheese sandwiches, which are basically just cut into triangles. It's either rushing to get them food before they start devouring each other, or having to set my things down at the door and help them with something unrelated that my mom refused to assist them with. Usually something related to their phones, a concerning message on Roblox, or acquiring art supplies because one of them feels the need to doodle. On my days off, I am often unexpectedly woken up and told to take care of the children all day because my mother has other plans. There is no prior warning or asking, just a sudden demand. I find myself sacrificing my free time and sleep to ensure that the kids are not neglected. My mother has expressed her desire for the kids not to feel ignored, not realizing that it is her responsibility as a parent. I am rarely contacted by my mother unless it is related to childcare or her own whims. My no is disregarded unless I am too busy, tired, or sick to help. At the end of it all, I receive half-hearted thanks before being ignored or dismissed again. I have many responsibilities at work and at home, and my limited free time is spent either dreading the next day's tasks or isolating myself in my room, ignoring my own needs. My mental health is already at an all-time low, and it is worsened when I have to ignore my own hunger or bodily needs because my mother suddenly needs my help the moment she remembers I'm there. I am frustrated that despite everything I do, I receive very little in return. My mother rarely prepares or buys dinner for the family, and there have been instances where I had to walk home from work because she forgot I had a job. She has not taught me how to do my own taxes, ignores me when I need someone to talk to, and sometimes fails to repay borrowed money unrelated to bills. There is no equal exchange here, and we do not have a typical mother-child or roommate relationship. I'm treated as an extra pair of hands with no voice, no sick days, and no room for disagreement. And if I make a mistake, my mother has no problem pointing it out, usually with unkind words. Children should not be seen as free labor. It is not fair to dump all the responsibilities on one child, especially when there are older siblings or adults in the household who can help share the workload. To provide more context, my dad is in the picture, but he works long hours to support our family financially. We have basic necessities like food and utilities, but there are times when we struggle to pay for the internet, phone service, and medical expenses. One missed paycheck or emergency situation can set us back for months. As a person in my early 20s with a low-paying job, no car, and no degree, due to lack of financial aid, moving out is not currently feasible. My job is within walking distance, but the income is not enough to save up for a car or a place to live. I am taking steps to improve my situation, but it is a slow process. Dealing with my mother's behavior only adds to the difficulty. Unfortunately, leaving is not a viable option given my financial constraints. I am doing my best with what I have, but I feel like I have no one to turn to. My dad is supportive, but often busy, while my mother is usually available but disinterested. I rely on Google for guidance, which is not ideal. I mainly posted here to vent my frustrations after a particularly unpleasant interaction with my mother. The situation is not severe enough to involve child protective services, as it is more about my mother's whims and pettiness rather than endangerment. It is disheartening that a significant portion of the responsibility falls on me, especially considering that I am not the oldest or second oldest among my siblings. I hope this story shed light on the challenges faced by many young adults who find themselves in similar situations. Remember, it's important to support and uplift each other, recognizing that everyone deserves to have their needs and boundaries respected. Take care, and remember to prioritize your own well-being too. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.